Hey everybody, it's News from Heaven. Today we're looking at how all good people who enter the afterlife go to like-minded groups. Oh, good people? How are you to say who's good and not good, and you have a different trajectory there? A lot of questions. But also, it would be kind of nice to be in a like-minded group. You ever feel like, I can't work with these people? Or not that you wouldn't interact with other people, but it seems like when you do get a harmony of mindset, you can accomplish things. So is there a mechanism spiritually that makes that we're grouped effectively? That's what we're going to dive into today. What's the purpose? Why are we here today? The ongoing program is that we are trying to develop a clear picture of how life really is. The most intriguing claim to that I've ever come across is what we're going to be reading to a piece of today, Swedenborg's reports of how life really is. If you just get all the data from all the different slices of life and see how when we take this picture and apply it to our day-to-day, does it help us in the ongoing struggle between the clouds in the mind and the sun in the mind, and the attempts that we go through to try to sort out and get past all this negative stuff that's dragging us down and get towards, when the sun peaks out and you just feel like, wait, no, life is good. People are good. This is going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Somebody's taking care of all of us. How do we get there? And how do we, when the sun doesn't feel like it's shining, how do we keep those concepts in our mind and store a little for a rainy day? That's what we're looking at here. We're at Secrets of Heaven 3350, and the last 4 episodes, I don't think I ever said this, but I probably should have if I was any kind of host that was worthy of the title. These are all basically a series, the last 4 shows and this one, because they're all out of the same part of Secrets of Heaven in sequence. There's a little bits we skip here and there. If you want to hear more context on it, go get the books and check it out for yourself. For now, 3350. Let me cite one more example to show what representations are like. We talk about this clear picture of reality. The language of correspondences or representations is how we can best understand a multi-layered reality, meaning there's the physical part, there's the spiritual part. With us, you'd say, I've got physiological needs, and then I've also got emotional, some would say spiritual needs. But then even that there's an outer and inner part of us, that why are we sometimes self-centered and small-minded and sometimes noble and just, and why do we fluctuate? Representations, correspondences can help us understand how these things interact with each other. I heard a large number of angels in the middle heaven. Hey, speaking of layers, middle heaven. So 2 out of 3 layers or depths of the mind opened, who were working together in concert to create a representation. Okay, so whatever this representation thing is, it's got to be worth putting some work into, because you can think of it as, there's just some kind of little felt board kids project. But if you've got angels of the middle heaven, according to Swedenborg, these are us. You know how I talked before about clearing up the mind and everything? These are people who are getting there. They're some of the most opened up, actualized, realized, whatever you want to call it, true, clear-sighted people in existence, right? And we can all get there. And they are pooling resources to create a representation. So these are not just, maybe not even just educational tools, but they provide some kind of function. The spirits around me, so Swedenborg is watching this, there are spirits would be us, but not as sorted out. These are more like the state that you and I are in, where we sort of know what's going on. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. We want to learn. The spirits around me could perceive their representation only when they were touched by an inflow of deep emotion. So it's not as simple. Everything in the spiritual side of life is psychological. The two are the same. So here, whether or not you can see something depends on if there's an object in the way. Or if you can, let's say someone needs to open the shades so you can see what's out the window. There, the opening has to do with what you feel. So these spirits that are with Swedenborg, right? When there's, and we'll put Swedenborg here, we'll give him his 18th century wig. They can only see this representation when, and what is it? It's not even a flow of knowledge. There's some deep inflow of emotion. touching them, and then they can see or understand, because spiritual understanding is spiritual sight. So somehow then they can understand the value, which allows them to actually look at what these angels are doing. The angels formed a choir whose many members were all thinking and saying the same thing. I said these people are some of the most enlightened. Like this is a role model for us to have. So how does this kind of society behave? So you've got a lot of them, and they're in some sort of arrangement. Swedenborg is calling it a choir. I don't think that just means like, okay, tenors, you sing a note, but they're somehow thinking and saying the same thing. So these people are unified in their project to the extent that they are operating like a single organ. So this would be like, you think about an organ in the human body. Let's say it's the heart. If you're going to pump that blood, it's a unity, a perfect unity of many. There are a lot of different muscle cells. It's like every time I launch into some metaphor like this, it's just, that I only have a cursory understanding of the biology of things like this, but I think I know enough to make this metaphor point. As I understand it, your heart ain't just one thing, it's a bunch of little cells. And the only reason a heart can do something as cool as make your blood go where it needs to go is that all those cells are working together perfectly. They are all firing exactly when they need to. And you couldn't have the heart as just a one thing. The way that biology works, if you tried to say we'll make a one cell that's as big as a heart, it couldn't sustain itself. None of the mechanisms would work. You couldn't get nutrients in, and it could never get the kind of leverage or power that you need. It's got to be a unity of many, but they've got to be in perfect sync. If they're all just feeling like, well, what do I want to be as a heart cell? That's over. So we're seeing here the one life from the Lord, which is wisdom and truth, right? No, wisdom and good. So it is the right thought and the right motivation pouring in here, but in such a way that all of these angels are able to act in unanimity like the heart cells. And what are they doing? They're creating whatever this amazing heaven project is. And it's such that only when the deep emotion touches the hearts of us and spirits can we understand and see what's going on there. Using representation. Okay, here we go. They formed a gold crown set with diamonds on the Lord's head. Oh, here we go. They're making a crown. Crowns are a little out. They don't quite hold the place in society now that they did then, but I don't know what the current emblem for leadership is that's equivalent, but let's say right now this representation is a crown. Let's have them making it over here now. It's a crown, it's got diamonds in it, and this is not like diamonds have some value, it's representative, so somehow these precious stones mean something, and they're putting it on the Lord's head, so on God's head, which is interesting. Like, okay, is God sitting there? How are they doing that? I don't know. Like, there's God's body. Somehow these angels are putting this on. Okay, all right, we got and this is something that you can only see when you're moved by deep emotion. Okay. This required a series of representations as rapid as thought and speech, as described above. So it's something more complicated than just, okay, you put the diamonds on. This is something that there's a lot of complexity and velocity to it. Remarkably, although there were so many of them, they all still thought and spoke in unison and accordingly created their representation in unison. I sort of think about like nanomaterials. Like they're each putting together these teeny little parts of it that are somehow going to make this thing. This was because none of them wanted to do anything on their own, let alone set themselves up over the others and lead the choir. Interesting. That here we might think like, oh yeah, okay, so we're making this crown. It's going to be really great for the Lord. If I'm here, I'm thinking, what's the best part of the crown? Well, it's this middle tip, of course. If I can make this, or if I can make this stuff the fastest, the greatest, like it's so fun being in this choir, and the greatest thing I could do would be to be the leader, the best in the choir, that's the opposite of what heaven is. Because what heaven, that's if you're thinking about yourself and your advancement. You could be thinking about for use, and it's not that there are all kinds of leadership positions in heaven, as Swedenborg describes, but the way you get there is by wanting to serve, not by wanting to be there, if that distinction makes sense to you. What the focus is on the task at hand and what the task will do. So whatever this thing is doing, the effect, that is their secret desire. There's not like a secret, looking over here and this angel are they making so many more diamonds than I am? Well, however, these rapid series of things, whatever their equivalent is in that, there's not that secret sort of dark spots there. No, what they're all longing for deeply, and this is what you get to when you're in the state of heaven, is whatever this effect is. And we pop in and out of that. Don't tell me that you've never believed in something, that you just, even with an individual or something, where you just wanted to accomplish the thing. If you knew that makes that person happy, that rights that wrong, that improves this area of people's lives, that there is joy just in the knowledge of that. We get flashes of that. The cultivation of that and having that occupy the central part in our life, that's what heaven is. Anyone who does that instantly and spontaneously splits away from the group. So if you're feeling like, I want this to be about me rather than I want this to be about the task, okay, but you can't be in here, which is exactly, if you think about the heart trying to pump the blood, anything that's not going along with that, it's life or death. You've got to be in unison. So you can't be in the heart if you want to do that. Instead, so what is that like? And you could think about, like, if you really just imagine, I could see like you're at work and maybe with your coworkers, you don't feel like, I just want, we love each other so much. We're people, right? Sometimes we struggle. So from our limited perspective, let's picture this. Imagine the group of people that you do most like, that you have the least grudge towards, that you admire the most, the ones that seeing them happy doesn't evoke jealousy in you or whatever. And imagine it's that group of people, right? So the feeling there of like, okay, we want to do this thing and we want to hold that in your mind as we read this sentence. Instead, they allow themselves to be led by each other, so that all of them individually and collectively are led by the Lord. And I was one time watching this behind-the-scenes documentary about a movie that had been made. It was a complex movie, and there was people who had done all sorts of things for it. I think it was Lord of the Rings, I think. There was like, back when that was a big movie and it came out and there was a DVD and it was showing all these, all these people had to make like the costumes and the sets. And what was so cool about that was everybody was praising the whole, and they understood they had a part in there. Like, I had to do this, but they would just compliment the other people that were around them, and knowing like, okay, we made the costumes, but if the actors weren't wearing the costumes and the director wasn't, everyone was just complimenting the whole, and was just overjoyed to be working on the project. I think that's this. Like, I don't want to make this project about me because it'll degrade the joy we're feeling in bringing this thing to life. So they're led by the Lord. All good people who enter the other life are brought into like-minded groups of this kind. So there we get to this problematic, it could be seen as problematic, good people. Because, I mean, come on, like, how are you going to label people? Are you going to hierarchy, judgmental, old school religious God? But if we think about it in this way, like the metaphor of the heart, and to say, like, what is good? Good is to want to, when you're acting from the motivation of wanting to do the task rather than wanting to be greater than others. You can see how that mindset allows for these kind of groupings to happen. You can't have the heart with these different cells all wanting to do their own things. The Lord is making sure that there's infinite environments for people, and people who do want to put themselves first. The Lord is creating the best possible environment for you to be in, but you can't be in a group of like-minded people that's cohesive like that, because if everybody wants to be the greatest in a group, it's chaos, and the Lord manages that chaos. and tries to get the best out of it and get the best quality of life for everyone who's in that. But you're not going to be accomplishing some complex, amazing task. So if we look at it like that, so when what we're aiming towards is to be good in that way, to cultivate those motivations, okay, that I can see how it's just the nature of that mindset allows us to be in these cohesive groups. Then I heard numerous choirs putting forth various representations. And even though there were many choirs and many in each choir, they acted as one. So here I know I'm stopping a lot here, but this is exciting stuff. So here we have it. Before I was saying, wouldn't it be nice to be in like-minded groups? Don't we sometimes differ with people? What heaven is sure, you're in there with your particular group. Okay? Say all these people are like-minded. They work as one. What heaven is, even though, yes, there can be other people that are, let's say, and this is no offense to God, let's erase you here. Let's say that there's another group here of some different kind of angels over here, of a different mindset, right? And they are such that they're good. Like they still, what's the difference between good and evil? For saying, if we are working towards acting for the benefit of the human race, if this green thing is the benefit of all, right, the good of all, we both groups want that. We go about life differently enough that it might be hard to get us all working on the same thing. Maybe we're not all, like if this is equivalent to some kind of software development, maybe these people are not that kind of person, right? That these people are more artistic or something. These share the same goal. So just because we get into these two different components where there's a ton of harmony here, they're completely united by what they're trying to do. And it's okay, so these people will create the software, and these people will create the aesthetics of it, and together that will create the strongest thing for the goal. So heaven is that even though you're in this group of like-minded people, you love this group even more than you love your own group. That you're not thinking, we're so great, we're going to do the great things for each other. You're thinking, how can I serve this? And really, you're all thinking about how can we serve the whole. And any single group would say, we're nothing compared to the whole. Like what we want to do is love everyone as much as we can, or with each other, because that's what's most effective for us to serve that. But we don't think that this next person here, because they are drawn in yellow, is somebody that is more the neighbor than anybody else. That's what heaven is. The forms of the various contributions combine into a single whole filled with heavenly beauty. The same effect can be produced by the entirety of heaven, populated as it is by millions and millions who act in unison because they love each other, since as a result they allow the Lord to lead them. Aha! Why are you going to follow the Lord? Why are you going to follow the Lord? For these people, it's because they love everyone. When you really care about everybody, then you know, well, the divine is the best leader we can have if we're all going to try to help each other. So I love all these people, so I'm saying, God, you got the best experience and skill set for this. What do we do to make this happen? Amazingly, the more there are, the more millions there are to populate heaven, the more distinct and perfect everything becomes. The deeper the heaven an angel inhabits, too, the more distinct and perfect everything becomes, since all perfection increases as it deepens. And when you're thinking about these millions, you think about going from the heart to the entire human body and how it is this collaboration between all these millions and millions and millions and millions of cells working towards the whole. The angels who were forming the choirs at the time were from the area of the lungs, and by the way, that metaphor that I just gave was a representation or a correspondence that all these different groups that we have actually do. Heaven as a whole functions like a single human being, so all these groups are performing a function similar to something. So this group is something like the lungs in the person, so whatever they're doing here does for the service of the whole of heaven what our lungs do for our bodies individually. Okay? And therefore, from the Lord's spiritual kingdom, since they were exerting a gentle influence on my breathing. The choirs involved in voluntary breathing, though, were different from those involved in involuntary breathing. And here's a sense of what kind of service are these angels providing? Well, one thing they're doing is, you talk about the whole, that what the angels in heaven are doing that correspond to the lungs on the greatest scale, that affects how our lungs are here. They could affect Swedenborg's lungs. And look at this, like some are helping with the principle of voluntary breathing, some are helping with the principle of involuntary breathing. Nobody's an island. That's even Swedenborg went off and learned all this far out sounding stuff about heaven. We are all in this together. We share the humanness, we share it. And the more that we all contribute to uplifting it and making sure that it reaches its potential and doing good and loving others, that creates a health that is shared by the entire human race. And that's the news from heaven. And the exciting thing to me is we can think of doing our little part to give back to the body, and we can think of all the goodness and all the truth. It can seem like, oh, the world is so crazy and there's all kinds of negative stuff. But if you think of all the positive stuff, being like a cohesive body and knowing that body is looking out for me, it's here helping me in the world. As soon as we leave this world, it's there gathering us up and bringing us into this heaven. And they're watching me, and I can contribute back, and we can do that in every interaction. And in every little day, we can get closer and closer to being a good functioning part of our whatever society we're destined to go to. That's good, man. And I hope that is a thought that can lead you throughout the day-to-day, and that we can feel excitement every day of getting to participate in that and getting more and more to be an instrument in the hands of the Lord and to be in that love. That doesn't sound so bad. To really be rooting for the success of the people around you, it doesn't sound so bad. I would take that. All right, thanks.